I'm Melissa Chalker, Program Manager of the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. The Foundation's mission is to enable seniors to live with independence and dignity in their communities. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging to provide information and resources to boomers, seniors, and caregivers. The primary focus of the program is to connect boomers, caregivers, and seniors to community-based programs. When people think of addiction to alcohol, drugs, or even gambling, they probably don't think of older adults. After all, who wants to think of grandma or grandpa in that way? But the truth is, addiction is a lifelong problem, and clinicians see many older adults with addiction issues. To talk to us today about this issue, we have two guests that will shed light on addiction among elders. Our guests are Jeffrey Beck, Assistant Director for Clinical Services, Treatment, and Research for the Council on Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey, and Stephen Drzewoszewski of Carrier Clinic.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today. I'm really glad to have you both. And Stephen, I do want to start with you, if that's okay. If you could just, to start out, give us a little bit of information about Carrier Clinic and what it is that you do there.
Okay. I am the intensive outpatient coordinator for Carrier Clinic. I run the evening adult addictions IOP. We cover dual diagnosis, and which is a primary with the primary of substance abuse being the main disorder. Carrier Clinic is a psychiatric hospital nonprofit. Which basically, we cover a myriad of different services from adolescents to older adults with behavioral issues, and a lot of free programming as well. We also have a heavy family component. We really concentrate on trying to treat both the client and their families and give everybody the right resources and in the hopes that everybody gets better.
Sure. And so in that you do treat folks with addiction that come in the door, whether that be drug or alcohol as well. Yeah. We talked a little bit before the show about some numbers and some statistics about drug use among your clientele and about the senior population in general. So I think you have some information on that for us?
Well, I mean, we know that seniors and substance abuse disorder is on the rise. We also know it's a growing population. So as we go forward, we know that it's going to become more of an issue.
Sure.
In pulling some numbers, we looked at our admissions for behavioral health issues in our older adults, and we found that about 25% of the admissions we're seeing right now for older adults do have an underlying substance abuse or substance use disorder as well. We also know that, in an estimation, there's by about 2030, there's going to be an estimated 71 million older adults in America,
yes.
Which they also, which is a 20% increase from now. And an estimated 16% of those will, and 11 million will need substance abuse services.
Wow.
So that's pretty significant.
That is pretty significant. And in the opening of the show, I talked about addiction being, a lifelong problem. In a lot of the seniors that you think are seen at Carrier, do you see that it's really a lifelong problem, or do you see any seniors who have a new onset of addiction problems in older age?
We see both. I mean, we see both. Yeah, sure. Can it be what we would call a later onset? A lot of times, as aging brings on psychological, sociological, even physical issues that can trigger. Someone starting to use substances on a more regular basis. I mean, maybe someone has been able to drink socially. Basically be able to manage it throughout their career. But then some situations come up in aging, and now they're maybe taking multiple medications, they're taking pain medications. We're seeing a large increase of older adults being addicted to pain medications.
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, it's absolutely something that can present later, but it can also be something that they've just been, dealing with their entire life,
right.
and it has been a lifelong issue. A lot of times I go back into progression with an older adult who come in and say, oh, this just started. I just started drinking this way. And then when you really get into the progression and you talk to their loved ones and you find out their pattern of use, earlier on, you could see that this is something that's been going on for quite a while.
Right.
It's just been kind of, addiction is cloaked in denial.
Sure.
And we know that it's a biopsychosocial disease, so it affects people on multiple levels. So it's something that,
Sure. So you've said a couple of things there that I want to go back to. One, in talking about this being lifelong versus early onset, and that denial factor of it. Do you see that a lot of these seniors are coming in and maybe don't realize that they have addiction, or maybe that you have to define, and maybe we can define for the audience, the difference between addiction and maybe alcohol misuse or abuse?
Yeah, alcohol, a lot of times they may not realize it. Like I said, the denial, which there's kind of a joke in the rooms, denial's not just a river in Egypt.
Right.
But it's kind of that I can't see the woods because the trees are in the way. It's one of these things where, we don't want to see it, and so, we believe that maybe it's not an issue, or we put all these things in our way. Misuse to me and to most is there's a lot of times where people, could accidentally misuse something. You can, misuse something on a one-time occasion or something like that. When we go into abuse and that kind of modality, you're looking at misuse on a regular basis. So like alcohol abuse would be somebody who's, could maybe abuse alcohol on a regular basis rather than misusing it on one occasion. I think a lot of people when they're younger can make some mistakes.
Sure.
I heard a lot of clients say, oh yeah, when I was in college, it was
Or even the example you gave of mixing it with medication. Perhaps they were always a social drinker, but the senior maybe now has a new medication or several new medications, and don't realize that there would be interactions, and so that would be classified as a misuse.
Yeah, that would be misuse as well. Absolutely. Sure. There's a whole lot of things that could be defined in there.
Sure.
When we get into substance abuse and dependence at this point, the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5, the latest version, actually makes no distinction between abuse and dependence.
Okay.
It's actually now substance use disorders across the board, which basically takes it from mild to severe. And that's pretty much on a scale. And there's 11 symptoms that they have listed out. Some of them may be use despite adverse consequences, different things like that. But you have to fit at least 2 of the 11 symptoms in order to be diagnosed with a substance use disorder.
And that's what would classify addiction as people more commonly would know it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But they at this point they've avoided that. But it's still it's still addiction. You could call it many different things, but it's defined a little bit differently now. So.
I'm sure there are challenges to serving seniors that might be different than serving the average population, and I'm not sure if one of those might be, given our talk about lifelong problem with addiction, in addition to denial, maybe that issue of now that I'm older, what's the point in trying to get clean?
Yeah, and that's what we call that fatalistic denial.
Okay.
That, I've been, this is just me. There's no point in changing at this point. This is just how I'm going to be a lot of times. And younger people can get into that too. I've seen that in younger people too. And that's a big jumping off point, a big point that we try to really, try to change when we get a senior in treatment, obviously. But yeah, we do see that. There's a prevalence of that. We also see difficulties being, difficulty relating sometimes to some of the younger members in a group or some situations like that.
So how do you overcome some of those challenges?
Well, you basically, through individual, you speak with them about it. You talk about what the barriers are. You talk about what the commonalities are. A lot of times you see, if you have, the fatalistic denial especially, is you could look at, you talk to them about how they, what constitutes addiction? Why should you change? What would you like to see in your future? What's going on in your family? What's happening in your life that you'd like to be, that you would like to see be different at this point? As far as relating to other to clients, a lot of times you try to really drill it down and to look at the commonalities of well, all right, we know what's different.
Right.
let's look at what's similar. How can you relate? How can, what, if you got a 65-year-old person in treatment and you have an 18-year-old on the other end of the table, you could always find common ground. Addiction is addiction. I mean, there's a lot of common symptoms, whether someone's 70 or someone's 18. You could usually find a common ground to kind of get them on board with.
You mentioned early on in talking about Carrier that they have an overall goal of bringing the family in and helping with things. Does that come in handy with seniors? Are you seeing a lot of families participate?
Yeah, that comes in handy with any, we look at a very family systems approach, and it's not, this is common across the board with addiction. If you just treat the addict or the alcoholic or the person dealing with substance use disorder, you send them back, and sometimes the family needs just as much help.
Sure.
And we see that very often.
Sure.
That's why we have multiple things for families at Carrier. The IOP, I can speak for the IOP. Every night that a client comes to our IOP, there is something going on for the families. For example, there's the parent support group that happens at the same time on Monday nights as our IOP. Tuesday night, we include family in the group. We do a multifamily group with the clients and their families, which turns out to be a very, you get to some really good issues, and a lot of things get worked out, because, one of the importance of that is a client, might hear something from another client, or they might hear something from another person's family member that they're tuned out from their own family.
Right.
At that point.
It makes them realize it.
Yeah, and they get an aha moment. Same thing with families. They may come in completely resistant to the idea of, why should I come here? And I've seen this. Why should I be in treatment? It's their problem. And there's a lot of resentment built up there.
Sure.
And anger and frustration. So a lot of times they may, very well hear something from another client when they've tuned out their own client at this, their own loved one at this point, or another family member that might make them go, aha, this is something good. So we have that happens every Tuesday night. And then on Thursday nights, there's Al-Anon that happens there. We also have a weekend family program, which is free to the community. You don't even have to have a client,
a patient
there to come to the weekend family program. Wow. So it's there's a lot going on for families there.
That is good to know. Yeah. I just want to go back to one thing because I'm not sure that we defined early on for the audience what IOP stands for.
Oh, we didn't, did we? Intensive outpatient treatment.
Okay, so that would be like a group therapy for people that aren't familiar with the language.
IOP, or intensive outpatient, is a primarily group-driven programming. However, it's a once-a-week individual session. As I said, we're also a dual diagnosis program, so we have a psychiatrist that each client will see. And we also have another therapist, that's a specialist in dual diagnosis, a licensed social worker who works with the clients as well. So it's, I think it's I'm very proud of it. Good.
Well, you can tell that you're very passionate about the issue, and I think you've shared some great information so far with us. So thank you for that.
No problem.
We know that addiction can not only be an issue for alcohol and drug use, but also for other things such as gambling. And for that, we have Jeff here to share some information with us in regard to that. Jeff, if you would first, as Steve did, would you tell us what the Council on Compulsive Gambling of New Jersey is and what they do?
Sure, we are a nonprofit agency. We're the only one in the state who addresses this issue. We try to raise awareness about gambling, about treatment, about prevention for individuals, for agencies, and for the community. We take a neutral position on gambling issues, but we try to act as an advocate for compulsive gamblers. We oversee a treatment network for gamblers. There's no federal money for gambling. Most insurance companies are still not covering gambling, even though we have parity laws in effect. Most gamblers, by the time they want help, have no money left. So we're kind of the only place they can go to. We have a network of presently 9 professionals or agencies who can provide treatment, and we basically pay them to provide services to the individuals who need help. We man a helpline, 1-800-GAMBLER. It's on every lottery ticket. It's on every casino card. We get roughly 15,000 calls a month, and roughly 150 of those are calls for help.
Wow.
A lot of them are wrong number calls, unfortunately. They say gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Yeah, I'd like to make a reservation for tonight.
Oh,
they think they're
heavens.
calling the hotel. So we direct them to the right place.
Well,
We
that's
also,
good of you.
Yeah, with the public media source, we provide statistics, we provide trainings, we work with EAP and drug court and other facilities to just try to help raise awareness about gambling. It's a serious issue.
It sure is.
And it's an equal opportunity addiction.
Yes.
No one is immune from it.
Yes.
Age doesn't matter, race doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter, intelligence doesn't matter. It really can bring anyone into it.
Right. And in knowing that, I believe you have also some statistics for us on...
We did a study in 2006 through Public Minds of Fairleigh Dickinson. That study was of people over 55. And what they found were 2% were what we call pathological gamblers, 4% were problem gamblers, and 17% were identified as at-risk gamblers. So you add that up, that's 23%. So when we talk to seniors, I say, 1 out of 4 of you has got a problem. Which one? And they all usually turn and look at somebody. So they kind of know who it is.
Sure.
When we compute those numbers, that's about 29,000 problem gamblers
in New Jersey.
Pathological senior gamblers in New Jersey. Roughly it's 6 to 8 million in the country, and we estimate 350,000 people in New Jersey are either compulsive gamblers, problem gamblers, or at serious risk for a gambling problem. So it's a big issue.
Sure. You've listed some different classifications of someone with a problem gambling. Could you define some of them for us, like we referenced pathological
Sure.
gambler?
DSM-5 has kind of changed the game a little bit. We now call it a gambling disorder.
Okay.
What we've always said in the past is pathological gambling, you have to meet 4 out of 9 symptoms.
Okay.
Number 1 is preoccupation, thinking about it all the time to the exclusion of everything else. Number 2 is the need to increase your bet in order to get the same satisfaction, kind of like tolerance with drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
Number 3 is attempts to stop or control, which have been unsuccessful. Number 4 is restlessness or irritability when not gambling. It sounds a lot like withdrawal. 5 is gambling to change your mood, escape, get rid of dysphoric mood. Number 6 is something unique to gambling. It's called chasing. I lose money at the casino. You have my money. I'm coming to get it back. So you try to get back the money you've lost. Number 7 is lies to people we love about gambling, because compulsive gamblers tend to be compulsive liars. Number 8 is damage to relationships or educational opportunities. And number 9 is borrowing money from other people to gamble. You need to meet 4 of those 9 in order to be classified as a pathological gambler. A problem gambler is simply someone where the gambling has interfered with some aspect of their life. Maybe legally, maybe health, maybe financially, maybe with the family, maybe with the job, maybe their thinking, maybe their spirituality, maybe their emotionality. People think of gambling and the first thing they think of is money. And that's certainly an issue.
Sure.
But there's also psychological consequences, emotional, cognitive, physical, and spiritual consequences. So we don't always see those, but they're there. And the more we look, the more we can find them.
Sure.
One of the unique things about gambling is it's called the invisible addiction. We can't test by blood or urine or hair follicles. We rely on people self-reporting. And so it's difficult because, as I said, gamblers tend to be in denial, as Steve was talking, and tend to lie. And we have no way of saying, look, you're wrong. Here's what the evidence shows. We can't do that blood screen or that urine screen.
Sure.
So it's a little tricky, but gambling is an addiction. It was recognized in 2013 by DSM-5 for the first time. It was moved from an impulse control disorder, like pyromania or kleptomania, into the addiction field.
Right.
And it's the first time we have a behavior called an addiction without the ingestion of a substance. And I think that's significant.
I think that is too. I think it's a huge step up for your organization in terms of advocating.
The only behavior that's called that. They talked about internet addiction, they talked about sex addiction, and they're both listed in the appendix of DSM because we really need to do more research
on them. Sure. Before the show, we were talking about, bingo and bus trips to Atlantic City, which a lot of people equate with older adults. But as you've just defined, that doesn't necessarily indicate that there's a problem or a compulsion to gambling. So there are some...
95% of the people who gamble are social gamblers.
Right.
What does that mean? They limit how long they play. They limit how much they spend. They gamble with other people. It's a family event. It doesn't interfere with other obligations. It's a form of entertainment. For a family of 4 to go to the movies today, with popcorn, with soda, you can spend $100.
Sure.
That family could say, let's take the 100, let's go to the racetrack, we'll have some fun. If we lose the 100, we'll leave. That's a form of entertainment. It's not interfering. That's what most people are, social gamblers.
Sure.
We'll never tell people don't gamble.
Right.
But we'll say to them, these are the signs of a problem, and just know that there's help available.
Sure. And talking about those signs, maybe for some family members who might be watching and are concerned that maybe a loved one is falling, what could they look for?
Missing family obligations, not doing the things you used to do, disappearing for long periods of time, money issues, things disappearing from your house, silverware being sold. Open up the refrigerator and see what it looks like, because maybe they've stopped taking care of themselves. A lot of issues revolve around just gambling becomes so paramount in their life that they ignore everything else. So I always say when you change behaviors and patterns of behavior that are pretty solid, you have to ask why. I think of things like eating and sleeping and sexual behavior. When those things change, there's usually a reason for it. And so gambling can often cause that. When people are mysterious about where were you, what were you doing? Oh, I was out for a walk. Just disappearing for long periods of time is often a clue.
Sure.
So those are things we kind of look for. They're financial signs, they're emotional signs because they're distant, their mind is elsewhere.
Right.
At one point I wrote a paper where I did an interview with Gamblers Anonymous members. And the things that they talked about was, you know, I was at my son's ball game, but my mind was at the racetrack. Or I missed this family celebration. When grandma stopped sending those birthday gifts, and you know how much she liked to do that, that indicates that there's something else going on, and that becomes a concern for us.
Sure. And what can those family members do to
One of the things they do is they call us for help. 1-800-GAMBLER is our phone number.
Okay.
And we will help family members, we will help gamblers. We get lots of calls from all different types. We get children calling about their parents, we get parents calling about their children, we get parents calling about their elderly parents. Lots of concerns.
Sure.
There's help available. We usually will talk. They're grateful just for the opportunity to talk. And then we can refer them to either a therapist, someone specialized in the field, or to Gamblers Anonymous. Gamblers Anonymous, or any other self-help group, kind of has 5 unique benefits. Part of it is identification. You realize you're not alone, that other people also belong. When you hear somebody tell you your story, that's when you know you're in the right place. Acceptance. You're not judged. It's unconditional. Because we all know in Gamblers Anonymous that whatever you did, we could have done. We had the potential to do. We do something called pressure relief, designed to resolve some of the financial issues going on. Let's list all your debts. Let's do a budget analysis. Let's look. We'll come up with a formula to pay your creditors, and we'll help you deal with the creditors and discuss it with them. The idea of 12-step recovery, which to me are 12 steps of life, and just understanding what we can control and what we can't. And finally, just the peer support. The idea that we can talk to somebody 24/7, that when we have an urge to do something, we can pick up a phone and call someone, and it makes it so much easier. And a counselor can deal with issues like suicide. Unfortunately, 20% of compulsive gamblers attempt suicide, larger than any other addiction.
Wow.
Domestic violence is very big. We call the Monday after Super Bowl Black and Blue Monday in our office.
Wow.
So we get a lot of calls about that. It's just a safe place to come and talk. A therapist is trained, they understand gambling, they understand there may be medications that can be useful as an adjunct to therapy or to Gamblers Anonymous. And to give hope. That's, I think, the most important thing. That just because you've always been a gambler doesn't mean you have to continue to be one.
Right.
That you have options, that you can turn your life around. Let me tell you about other people I've worked with, what they've been able to do. You sit in a room, you walk into Gamblers Anonymous, there are people there with 20 years of recovery, and you say, wow, this is possible.
Right.
And it gives us hope.
Sure.
And that's important.
Absolutely. Well, you've shared some really great information with us so far, so I hope that our audience is really, writing all this down and taking notes. We did talk, when we talked with Steve, about challenges in serving the senior population. So are there specific ones?
Yeah. For seniors particularly, gambling's a very social activity. It's a chance to get together with friends. It's a chance to get out of the house. It's a chance to mingle. We know there are lots of bus trips to Atlantic City. We know that bingo is very popular. We don't want to tell people that they can't do that.
Right.
We don't want to scare them off. Often we'll do something called harm reduction. So as opposed to saying you can never gamble again, we'll say, you know, you're spending $200 a week and you really can't afford that. Can you spend $50 a week? And we'll try to work with them to reduce it because we realize it's an important part of their life. but at the same time, it's causing negative consequences. So that's part of it. The other part is casinos have a unique appeal to the gambler. Many seniors are what we call escape gamblers. They gamble to get rid of life situations. They gamble to escape what's going on in their life. Maybe some of them have recently been widowed, they've retired, they've lost friends. And gambling is an escape from that. If you've ever seen the slot machines, it's almost like a trance experience. It's an out-of-body where your mind is focused solely on that, and all your problems are forgotten. So the casinos, they create that, and I'm not going to. And some of the seniors love that. They get treated with respect. They get treated by their name.
Right.
On their birthday, they get a call from the casino sponsor saying, "Hey, we haven't seen you in a while," and they enjoy it. Plus, there's a safety element.
Sure.
You feel comfortable being around people. So we try to work with them to understand what it is that they want, because treatment's got to be collaborative. It's got to be what I want and what you want together. You're the expert on you. I'm not you. I'm not the expert on you. You are. But together we can work and find what will work for you to reduce the harm, and that's really the goal.
Wow. Well, I think that is a perfect place to stop you on that, because I think that is a really great message for people to hear, that they have control over what they can and cannot do. And so if they need help, they can call 1-800-GAMBLER, or they can reach out to a well-respected agency in the community for help with drug and alcohol addiction as well. So again, I would like to thank both of you for taking the time out today to join us. It's really been beneficial and really informative. And the phone numbers that you've shared, such as 1-800-GAMBLER, we'll be sure to share with our audience as well. So thank you both very much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So again, I would like to thank our guests for sharing their time with us today. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging and is made possible by donations to the foundation. To become a sponsor for the Aging Insights program, please go to our website at www.njfoundationforaging.org or call our office at 609-421-0206. At the website, you will see a survey online about Aging Insights. Feel free to provide that comments there and any other show topics which you think we could offer in the future. We want to remind you to find out about senior services in your area. Please contact your County Office on Aging, also known as the Aging and Disability Resource Connection in your county. Their numbers are on our website, but you can also call the state hotline at 1-877-222-3737. Thank you for watching this episode of Aging Insights, and remember, aging is everyone's business.